We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense. And how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity so you can safely use any technology. Okta, the world's identity company.
I'm Yasmin Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, Fast Company contributing editor Alex Pasternak on the arrest of Telegram CEO Pavel Durov.
He's got a fantastic physique, which he's not afraid to show off.
WeTransfer co-founder and chief creative officer Damian Bradfield on how AI will impact the creative industry.
AI, I think, is incredibly scary for people that are average.
And, as always, keeping tabs.
Ran down to the beach with a chainsaw, cut off the whale's head, and then bungee corded it to the roof of the family minivan.
But first, here's the download. The news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
The company formerly known as Twitter, of course, Elon Musk's X, was banned in Brazil this past week after a ruling from the nation's Supreme Court. According to the court, X was not complying with court orders to ban certain accounts that were said to have broken Brazilian law. This order was initiated by Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who has been feuding with Musk for months. He's not the only one. Justice Moraes also said that anyone in Brazil who attempted to use X with a VPN could be fined thousands of dollars a day.
Did you hear the segment on Who Weekly where they talked about how when it got shut down in Brazil, they realized how much Stan Twitter comes out of Brazil?
Brazil was the second largest country by population participating on X. Yeah, we really lost some good ones.
10,000 hotel workers from major cities walked off the job in a strike this past Sunday. The workers are represented by labor union Unite Here, and the strike affected Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt chains. They are striking for higher pay, increased staffing, and decreased workload.
I would like all of those things as well.
Yeah, same.
Here. Support unions, everybody.
Yeah, support unions.
Apple, Microsoft, and NVIDIA, among other companies, are talking about investing in OpenAI. But OpenAI is facing more competition than ever now, especially with Mark Zuckerberg backing open source AI that people can use free of charge. Closed source AI, such as OpenAI, charge companies to use their most powerful models. Either way, experts believe at some point everyone will rely on AI, whether that be open source or closed source. And chances are, so will podcast listeners to replace Yaz and I.
Yeah. And well, look, as long as the sort of AI-generated minion content keeps coming my way, we're good. Solo dining is on the rise, and restaurants are responding to this by altering menus and seating arrangements to appeal to solo diners. Restaurants have been changing portion sizes so solo diners can still order a few things off the menu. Wait a second. Hold up. This is just a way to get more money from us.
This is just tapas.
Yeah.
This is shrinkflation.
Now it means that if you're dining with someone, those few things will be smaller, and then you'll have to order more small things. This is a big conspiracy. Anyway, OpenTable CEO Debbie Su thinks that this is due to a number of factors, including the prevalence of remote work and self-care trends. Japan even has a word for solo dining, ohitori-sama, meaning alone.
You know what? Good for these people. And that's the news you need to know today.
So, Josh, what's the craziest thing you've seen on the internet this week?
I know you have something you want to show us.
Okay, I'm going to play it now.
Without your bravery, we're all out of luck. No, this can't be denied. You gotta be special.
You gotta be special.
What is the name of this song?
Hero.
Hero? There's so many other better songs named Hero.
This episode could not go by without me mentioning a late entry to the Song of the Summer competition.
Oh my God. So it's Espresso, it's BBL Tristy, and it's Hero by
it's
Laura
the Irish
Trump.
Kids.
The Irish Kids. Yeah, the sport.
And Lara Trump's Hero, which is a new music video she released. She sounds insane. She looks like she's in a different music video from the other singer in the music video, who is also sometimes just like wearing a shit ton of beads instead of a shirt, as far as I can tell. Lara Trump looks like she's kind of like wine drunk in Midtown. Anyway, listen, it's
God.
my favorite thing that's come out this week. It's so funny.
It's overall been a dark week.
I know.
This was funny. This made me laugh.
There's a lot of things about the Trump campaign that are funny and dark, but I feel like this is so purely just funny.
Yeah.
It's like one crazy lady's vanity project.
I mean, it is dark that she's the co-chair of the RNC.
Yeah,
but let's have this one.
But let's just have
take this one as a win.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of crazy things on the internet this week, we're actually going to talk about like a real crime.
As opposed to the Lara Trump song, which is just like a crime against my ears.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of real crimes, last week, Telegram CEO Pavel Durov was arrested in Paris. French authorities detained and charged him in connection with an investigation related to a dozen different charges, including money laundering and child abuse. Here to break down what happened is Fast Company contributing editor Alex Pasternak. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Let's start with the basics here. What is Telegram?
Telegram is an incredibly important messaging app, incredibly popular. Started by the founder of Russia's biggest social network, VKontakte, in 2013. It's become an incredibly popular app around the world. Some would say an incredibly dangerous app.
What makes it so kind of dangerous?
You go into Telegram and you can search for any topic you want, and you'll find channels that correspond to those interests. And there are hundreds of thousands of channels on Telegram, some of them with hundreds of thousands of people in them. And these channels are essentially blog streams, like feeds that are provided by the owners of the channels. They blast out information to the audiences within them. And it's become an incredibly important place to go to for information about current events. When the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, Russia invaded Ukraine, this was the place to find some of the most up-to-date information, videos from the front lines, sometimes incredibly gruesome things. The same goes for the fighting that's happening now in the Middle East. After Hamas invaded Israel, a lot of content was showing up on Telegram.
Mm-hmm.
And because it tends not to be as moderated as other social platforms, it's also become a place for a lot of criminal activity.
If I searched, like, I don't know, terrorism against Josh and found a channel and I posted on it, like, I want to commit a crime against Josh, does anybody have 10,000 guns? Wouldn't people be able to, like, just trace it back to me and arrest me?
A lot of the messaging on Telegram is public. It happens in these public chats.
Mm-hmm.
There's also private channels.
Got it.
Where you need an invite to show up. The way that Telegram works, unlike some other apps, is it doesn't allow you to automatically send reports from within encrypted chats.
Mm-hmm.
It tends not to moderate private chats, the invite-only chats, and it will moderate the public chats, but it does so with a much more hands-off approach than many of these other platforms.
How hands-off are we talking on a scale of like Facebook to 8chan?
Telegram, like all these platforms, gets takedown requests, gets data requests from governments around the world. And these platforms will comply with those requests depending upon the applicable laws, whether the governments have a warrant or a court order and so forth. Telegram prides itself on basically declining most of those requests. There's a separate system that exists for child exploitation material, child pornography. And any US-based platform is subject to laws that hold it responsible for that content.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a responsibility that goes beyond Section 230, which is a law that tends to hold these platforms unaccountable for the content on them. Child pornography is on a different level. Telegram is not based in the US. And Pavel Durov has said that it's based in Dubai, and it's also registered in the Virgin Islands. But he said that his platform is not subject to the same laws as some of those other platforms. Now, that being said, it has shut down numerous channels involved with terrorism. It continues every day to take reports of and then act against child pornography. It uses AI, it says, to do this moderation. It even has a Telegram channel where you can see the takedowns, the channels that it's been taking down on a daily basis.
But we should also point out it's not always used for sort of nefarious activity. I think you have here, Macron and his cabinet use it.
Yeah. So despite bans by many governments around the world, especially Russia, where Telegram was born in 2013, the app is incredibly popular across Russia. It's popular across Eastern Europe. It's popular in Ukraine. It's used by the Russian military. It's used by the Ukrainian military. And it's used by government officials in all these countries. It's even used by people within Macron's cabinet. Supposedly, Macron himself has used Telegram.
You talked about encryption, right? And it's something that WhatsApp talks about all the time. Are messages encrypted on Telegram?
Telegram has become known as an encrypted messaging app, and that's something that its founder has often said. I think there's a couple of misnomers there. As I said, it's not just a messaging app. It's something like a social media platform. When we think of messaging apps like WhatsApp or Signal, both of which use end-to-end encryption, or iMessage, these are messaging apps. You tend not to message large numbers of people at once. It's not like a blog platform. Telegram is often used as a sort of blog platform for all kinds of content. But it's also not fully encrypted. The messages by default that you send to other people or that you engage with in these chat rooms, those are not encrypted. You can send an encrypted message, they call it a secret chat, but it takes a few steps. It's a little more cumbersome than on some of these other messaging platforms like WhatsApp and Signal, which again are both end-to-end encrypted by default. Telegram is not, and that's something of a misconception. And actually, it's contributed to Telegram's popularity, I think, on the right lately. It's become something of a cause celeb for the right wing. Telegram has been championed by people like Elon Musk. The crypto community is heavily into Telegram.
We'll get into that in a second, but I do want to ask before we go on, who is Pavel Durov? What is his deal?
It's a good question. He's a very sexy man, apparently, according to his Instagram.
His Instagram, you put his Instagram in the notes here, Alex, and it is wild. That man is I mean, that is an attractive man.
Me and my husband have a joke about people where we'll be like, whenever we see somebody like that, it'll be like, oh, he definitely enjoys Dubai. Brackets derogatory.
He does. He does. And he is a citizen of Dubai, where Telegram is headquartered. But he's also a man of the world.
Most of his posts are just shirtless, which is interesting.
Yeah, he's got a fantastic physique, which he's not afraid to show off. He happens to be worth something like between $9 and $15 billion. Presumably he owns some shirts. I'm not sure, but it looks almost like someone just prompted the AI for like sexy young tech titan in exotic locales, HD. It's almost it's almost too much. He's been enjoying his life definitely since he left Russia. He was born in St. Petersburg in 1984, when it was then Leningrad. His family left when he was a kid for Turin.
He has over 100 kids.
What?
Yeah, he claims he has over 100 children with women that he doesn't know. He's a prolific sperm donor.
Oh, is he one of those billionaires who's like repopulate? We're at a population drought, like the Elon Musk sort of person. Is that what he is?
Yeah, people have called him the Russian Mark Zuckerberg, but he's probably more like the Russian Elon Musk in this way. Like Elon Musk also claims to own very little.
Yeah.
He's a vegetarian. He's a total ascetic. He says he abstains from alcohol and drugs and caffeine and fast food. He went on a water-free diet for a week back in 2019, he says. He's definitely living his life in his way. He's also incredibly wealthy.
I guess he's like a big, quote unquote, free speech guy.
Yes.
Seems like he donated
He's a libertarian.
$1 million to Wikipedia. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a libertarian, and he's made some big donations, including to the Wikipedia Foundation back in 2012.
I just want to recap here so I know this straight, because I knew nothing about this guy. So
Me neither.
somehow worth billions of dollars,
Mm-hmm.
from Russia, lives in Dubai, looks great shirtless, has maybe 100 kids, is one of those type of people, very much like anti-woke pilled libertarian tech executive, right? That's pretty much painting the picture of him.
Yeah, and the rightward turn, I think, is sort of completed this past year, actually. Telegram exists out there as this encrypted messaging app, along with other apps like Signal and WhatsApp. And earlier this year, there was a controversy at NPR involving so-called wokeness within the institution. A former NPR editor left and complained about the politics within NPR. Subsequently, NPR's new CEO, Catherine Maher, who formerly was the head of the Wikimedia Foundation and who has written for Fast Company a number of times before, she became the new CEO of NPR, and she fell right into the crosshairs of the right wing. And in the process, people dug up the fact that she sat on the board of the Signal Foundation, which operates Signal, the messaging app, as a nonprofit. That ended up leading a lot of people on the right to claim that Signal was compromised. There was evidence that the US government gave money to Signal at its founding, which is true, but doesn't mean anything in terms of influence over the app. There's a lot of technologies that have received money from the government. But in any case, there's no evidence that Signal is compromised. But the right has jumped on this narrative that Signal is dangerous and woke, and Telegram is the app to use. And Pavel Durov has seized on this, and he's sort of contributed to this story. And he's also claimed that Signal and WhatsApp are both compromised by the government, and that the best app to use for secure messaging is Telegram.
How does Telegram make money, or does it make money?
So Pavel is estimated to be worth something like $15 billion.
Yeah.
His money came from the sale of vContact, which was the Russian Facebook that he started back in 2006. He was forced ultimately to sell vContact under pressure from the government. He didn't want to cooperate with the government, so he sold it to the government. He left the country. He had already started Telegram, and using that money that he got from the sale of vContact, he's built Telegram into this massive app, which is valued at a number that would make him worth this much. But as far as revenue, Telegram doesn't make money, doesn't have a net income. It makes cash from selling some premium features. It's raised money through a cryptocurrency that Durov had started a few years ago. He's borrowed money. He also has some investors, and reportedly he owes them back by the spring of 2026. He owes hundreds of millions of dollars. He is, unlike any other CEO I can think of, the 100% owner of this company. No one else technically owns it, he says. And that gives him incredible power over what happens on Telegram. It also means increased security. He operates with a very small staff. He says he has only 30 engineers total, keeps cost incredibly low. Part of that is, of course, because they do so little moderation. But it's also his control of the company, his sort of sole control, that also makes him so vulnerable to influence from governments or from, for instance, the French. Now that he's been detained, some people have speculated that Telegram simply can't operate in his absence for that long. There could be detrimental effects on the app. For instance, he might need to be there to pay bills and sign documents. But he does say he controls basically all the company, which is fairly unheard of.
That's like when the one staffer in our office who had an IMDb Pro login left. We were all like, damn, he took the password with him. I'm curious, you mentioned the fact that he was born in Russia, and I know Telegram is used by sort of Russian soldiers, but he's not really pro any government, right? He's had some conflict with the Russian government before.
Yeah, he has. He left Russia in a huff in 2014. This was after Russia had for years tried to get him to shut down dissident groups on vContact. He finally had to capitulate and sell the company. Over the years, Russia has threatened to, and multiple times it has banned or blocked Telegram. People have been able to get around those blocks, but it's since become incredibly important within Russia, within the government. After he left Russia, he obtained citizenship in St. Kitts and Nevis by donating $250,000 to the country's...
Is this one of those countries, you can just pay a lot of money and get citizenship? Yeah.
It's a bizarre and somewhat shady industry that I've written about at Fast Company. But so he bought that passport, and then later he became a citizen of the United Arab Emirates. And interestingly, a citizen of France. He knew that if he came to France, he could be in some legal jeopardy. So there is some mystery and speculation about why he decided last week to fly from Azerbaijan to Paris.
And post on Instagram, hey guys, I'm in France, like comment if you want to hang out. Or something.
One of the only interviews he's done in years recently gave an interview to Tucker Carlson. He said that he's constantly moving around and he's constantly staying out of countries where he could be in danger. The US is one of them. He used to be in the US, but he left. He says that the federal government, that the FBI tried to infiltrate Telegram. He's a very paranoid person. It's just interesting that he did fly to France last week.
Summer in the south of France. Like, what are you going to do? Sometimes you got to get arrested.
I mean, all of this seems designed to just fuel conspiracy theorists, honestly, like all of this.
Anyway, what is the illicit content Telegram is accused of disseminating?
So the French authorities said that he was detained for questioning as part of an investigation that started earlier this summer over an unnamed person related to a dozen different charges, including money laundering, sharing images of child abuse, and also using cryptography services without permission.
Pavel Durov has been charged with enabling various forms of criminality on the platform. He's been released on a €5 million bail, but he has to stay in France.
But a lot of the focus in the media and by prosecutors has been on child porn, child sexual exploitation material. It's also possible that Telegram was in some way knowledgeable about and permitted, or perhaps was complicit in some of the activity.
In a statement Wednesday, the Paris prosecutor's office said that Telegram had almost completely failed to respond to its legal requests for user data in prosecuting cybercrime cases.
It's become known for its light moderation. It enables these incredibly large groups, invite-only groups, where anything can be discussed and where people can talk about all sorts of illegal activity. If you turn on location services when you start up Telegram, there's a feature where people nearby who use Telegram can find you, and you'll get a lot of messages about drugs. So if you want illegal drugs, I'm not saying, go to Telegram. But
wait, so walk me through this a little so I can break this down. So turn on locations.
I haven't used it for that yet, but you can also use it for these encrypted chats. But in general, a lot of the activity is happening somewhat out in the open in public chats. I've joined Telegram groups that are pro-Islamist extremist groups that are posting extremist content, so you can see the kinds of propaganda that's being spread in the Middle East. You find pro-Russian military groups, pro-Ukrainian groups, the Israeli military, and it was indicated as part of the big messaging in Islamic State's attack in Paris in 2015. It's also been used a lot by dissident groups that don't want to be tracked by the government. Governments, of course, they can see these public chats, and oftentimes the government is in the chat. They can't see into the private chats.
Got it.
And they can't see user data. But Telegram, Pavel Durov has the ability to see all that information And he has, for the most part, declined to take the content down or provide any user data to the government, even though a lot of that information is not encrypted and it exists on the platform. I've used Telegram to speak to hacktivist groups who are operating out of places like Belarus. The cyber partisans who I wrote about last year have used Telegram to discuss their operations against Russia. They're basically hacking the Russian military operations and Belarusian military in order to prevent the invasion of Ukraine. So you have a lot of political activity, you have a lot of military activity, you have a lot of interest groups. You can go in there and find conversations about basically any topic you want.
And the moderation is, I mean, when there is some, it's like totally opaque, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. You can file a complaint at Facebook or Instagram if you see content that is problematic, and they'll take action, and they will tend to respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
The way it works on Telegram is they never respond. They almost never respond to people who notify them. But they do take action on content that is illegal, like child porn, like terrorism. They also get not just these requests from government and from users, but they get a lot of requests from Google and Apple. Google and Apple have strict rules about the apps that are on their stores. And what that means is that in order to stay on these app stores, Telegram has to remove more content from the versions of Telegram that come through those stores. So if you're using Telegram from the App Store, that version will be more sanitized than the version of Telegram that you download from Telegram's website. And that's because Telegram has to comply with Apple and Google in order to stay on these platforms.
It also seems like a volume issue where there's just so many public messages that like governments can't necessarily sift through all of it.
And I think that touches on an issue with moderation in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an uphill battle for all of these platforms. And this is one of the promises, of course, of AI, is that it's going to solve the problem of moderation. Of course, that hasn't exactly worked. But a lot of these platforms, from Meta to, of course, X, Twitter, have fired a lot of the people who used to do the moderation in favor of these automated systems. And the automated systems, they don't tend to work. And what's more, when they catch something, they can't often explain why they did, or sometimes they get things wrong and there's no recourse. On Telegram, yeah, you certainly have the same problem. But again, their process of moderation is really opaque. They don't tend to talk to journalists. They don't say very much about how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're operating with a really minimal team. Pavel said, again, it's 30 engineers who are running the whole system of almost 1 billion users.
Is that about how many are left running X right now after all the layoffs for Elon? I'm sure it's a few more than that.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure this is one of the reasons Elon likes Durov so much. But Elon has his voice to support for him. And
who else is?
And maybe Elon too. Elon too could be subject to some of these same regulations someday.
Don't fly to France, Elon.
No, I don't think he will.
He seems like the guy who's like ripe to be like the cause celeb for the Barry Weisses of the world, the right-wing people, some of the Silicon Valley folks.
You'll see Elon Musk or a lot of tech titans tweeting hashtag free Pavel. I understand it philosophically, given all that we've talked about, but it seems kind of crazy to tweet out that hashtag when it's like
potentially child porn.
Yeah, exactly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know. I think so. Again, I think it speaks to the fact that like Telegram and Pavel have been sort of enmeshed in this culture war conversation. A lot of uproar from the libertarian right, the Silicon Valley types, crypto community, who see Telegram as this bastion of free speech, protecting freedom and privacy from the authoritarian hand of government.
Well, it cuts both ways because, I think you pointed this out earlier, but it's also been great for dissidents, in places like Ukraine. Like that lack of moderation does have some upsides.
Absolutely.
That's always the promise of social media and the internet from the very beginning, is that it's democratizing in a lot of ways. But then like the reality is that like with this, when they're like, we're bastions of free speech, and then it's just like porn and drugs is basically what ends up being on these sites right now. I mean, like it's neo-Nazis and porn right now on X. That's about it.
Yeah, and I think it's important to separate these issues because let's acknowledge that the concerns about governments trampling on freedoms, especially digital freedoms, communication, privacy, and censorship, these are real concerns that people have around the world, especially in more authoritarian places. And Telegram and apps like it help to facilitate communication within and outside of those communities. Political dissidents use it, and a lot of activist groups have championed it for its role in human rights. But there's another issue here, which is that despite all of the battles over free speech and privacy and government control, which have been going on as long as we've had any kind of messaging, Telegram has also been caught up in a culture war narrative. And that narrative has obscured the fact that this conversation isn't just about freedom of speech, but it's also about the freedom to be in a platform where there isn't terrorism, where there isn't violence, where there isn't child porn, there aren't criminals dealing drugs and so forth. Those are important freedoms and rights too, and those are encoded in laws. And increasingly, platforms are having to come to terms with that. There was a great quote in a piece that Chris Stoker-Walker did for us at Fast Company from an associate professor at Utrecht University named Catalina Goanta. She says that freedom of speech is not absolute, especially when an online service apparently fails to comply with a wide spectrum of laws in a large number of jurisdictions. That's not freedom of expression. It's just a lawless space that has a net negative impact on society. In the next couple of years, the European Union's Digital Services Act is going to start holding platforms accountable in ways that the US with Section 230 just doesn't. And so that could start to lead to more repercussions for CEOs and for companies. There's also the Online Safety Act in the UK. There have been some detentions of executives before. In 2022, authorities in the Netherlands arrested a Russian national who had programmed something called Tornado Cash, which was used to anonymize crypto transactions. It was being used by the North Koreans. He was ultimately charged and sentenced to 5 years in prison for building that and for essentially aiding in money laundering. And in 2016, Brazilian authorities arrested a Facebook executive after the company refused to turn over information from WhatsApp that was part of a drug trafficking investigation.
Mm-hmm.
There's also this increasing effort by law enforcement to get into these channels, these encrypted messaging apps, to infiltrate terrorist and criminal communications.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for walking us through all that, Alex.
Thanks. I hope that was helpful.
So we'll be back with Alex for keeping tabs, but first, a quick break followed by my interview with WeTransfer co-founder and chief creative officer, Damian Bradfield.
We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense, and how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity for your business, so you can safely use any technology. You can build experiences that are richer and more secure, grow revenue without running up costs, and scale easily, no matter your tech stack. Enjoying the best of both? It's possible. It's Okta. Okta, the world's identity company.
Damian Bradfield is the Chief Creative Officer and co-founder of WeTransfer. That's the file-sharing site you may have used to send over files that are too big to attach in an email. Now, you may have noticed when you use the site that it displays art from independent creators while you use it. Another arm of the platform called WePresent handles that. It's an award-winning digital arts and editorial platform. I sat down with Damian in our studio and we chatted about how it all works, what he learned working in the luxury sector about advertising, and how it felt to win an Oscar. To start off, I asked Damian how his company went from a file sharing service to providing a whole suite of creative tools.
We're not a traditional business in the sense of many other companies. I think we've always tried to look at business that we were in slightly tangentially. Our advertising platform isn't banners, and it never was. It was something different. Because we weren't doing these banner ads, which destroyed the internet. We had these beautiful big ads and they needed to be created. So we had to make them in-house. and every single ad basically we were producing. And it meant that we were deeply ingrained in the creative process. We had people that were very involved in design and making sure everything looked beautiful. So much like the origin story of WeTransfer, it was a tool, and these were tools that we were basically designing for ourselves. So our approach to advertising was basically the antithesis of the advertising industry. We didn't want a banner in sight. Banners, I just felt were ugly and intrusive. Our format, is really about giving you the best visual experience that you can on the screen. And we have the privilege of only using like 5% for the little upload box. So we're in a position where we can really do great work.
Do you tailor your work to the user? So for example, if I go on the Daily Mail, right?
Why would you do that?
Josh, my producer, knows this very well. I'm a Daily Mail addict.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's so sad.
There's help for that,
But I will get served ads, for Net-a-Porter and like the last pair of shoes I can't afford that I was searching, right? You guys kind of get to serve people whatever you want.
We can't target as well as the Daily Mail can. If that's possible, we're not sure that that's...
Talk about a crazy website experience. It's so broken.
I mean, even before it was a website, it was broken. We can target people, but not to the same level of granularity. I know where you live, as in the geography, the time of day. There are certain things that we can do, but we're a branding platform. The biggest advertisers we have are like luxury goods. 10 of the world's biggest luxury goods brands advertise with us. It's a platform where people really come to tell a story, not to try to flog you some cheap crap that you don't really need.
Right.
And that's something, honestly, that we take a lot of pride in. I think it's the massive distinctive feature of WeTransfer. There is no other platform on the internet that looks like us.
So you had a career in advertising prior to WeTransfer. What did you learn from that career that informed how you've approached your work at WeTransfer?
So prior to that, I worked sometime in luxury goods, and I think it's like a combination of the two. There's something beautiful in luxury if you can take away the obnoxiousness of the luxury goods world, in that they understand scarcity better than anybody. And that is a very attractive trait for a brand or an individual to have. There's nothing more unattractive than somebody really, trying to force themselves onto you.
Totally.
You want to play a game and, is this person interested in me or not? I can't tell. It's interesting if it's not so blatant.
Right.
The luxury goods world knows that better than anybody else. Through advertising, what we have is a billboard. It's literally a billboard on the internet. And there are certain rules in advertising as to how much copy you can have on a billboard before you lose someone's attention or they no longer read it. We have strict guidelines around how much text will be on an ad. Hence, the luxury goods world loving it so much, because rarely do they tell a story. They just show you a visual and...
Yeah, like it's like a perfume ad, just a woman in a field.
Yeah.
Tell me how you work with clients at WeTransfer. Is the process different from when you were in the advertising world? When you come to them, do you have a fully baked idea? Do they come to you saying, we have this film you want to put on your platform? What does that look like?
So two different things. So most of the time, if it's an advertiser, let's say it's Apple or MailChimp or something, they would already have a campaign that we would simply take that campaign and run it. Maybe we make something a bit more interesting from it because we have to make a custom format. So then maybe our studio would make it interactive or they'd make it a slideshow or something or other. But most of the time that idea is baked.
It's already fully baked. Got it.
We have WePresent, which is another platform alongside WeTransfer. And that's where we'd probably have a different conversation. They would commission us to go and work with an artist or something to produce something, a film that would then run on WePresent and run on WeTransfer. And that's obviously a much longer process, and maybe that takes 6 months to come to fruition. If you were to extract it from being a website, the best visualization of WeTransfer is basically Vogue, or it's that experience. It's a beautiful ad. You can spend just as much time looking at the ads as you can the editorial, and then you get into some intelligent editorial or something that you haven't seen before, an artist you haven't heard of. That's the experience that we're trying to build on the platform while someone is honestly at the post office.
Yeah.
They're just sending something through us, and we're trying to just keep them entertained with something that is differentiated. I think we've done a good job in creating a sort of safe haven on the internet that isn't as cluttered and ugly and bombastic as some of the other websites. Squarespace has been an advertiser with us for, a decade. I mean, we've got some really long-lasting brand relationships that have been pretty impressive. I think that doesn't come along that often in the media world.
In terms of the artists that WeTransfer supports, how do you make those selections?
I would say it's art and not science.
Nice.
Yeah. It was very personal for a long time.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, so a lot of friends, a lot of people we respected and loved, we would literally just cold call, cold email. We would love to feature you. Certain markets, they think that it's totally weird and they think that we're trying to sell something. And
Really?
Yeah. In certain markets, it's definitely seen as a little bit taboo to gift somebody something. They think that there's a catch. Americans love it. They're like, oh, great.
Oh, yeah, I know. We love free shit. Yeah.
No problems whatsoever. But in the UK, for example, I think a little bit more pessimistic. They were like, really? What's the catch? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But it was all personal. So it was myself, a couple of other people. And now there's a curatorial team and we present, and it's a little bit more structured. But still, how do you work out whether an artist is up and coming and they're going to make it? A lot of it's gut feeling, right? And then the team is very conscious of trying to make sure that we do represent as many different communities as we can. We don't post that much content, so it's not as if we're doing 19 posts a day.
Right.
So there is a limit to how broad with it we can go. But the more diverse, the more interesting, the more relevant it is to our audience. I mean, the biggest article of not last year, but the previous year was about young girls and their inability to be creative with period pain. It was the most highest performing article that we had on the site. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that.
No.
And in terms of artist stuff, we've worked with Bjork, Licky Lee, Riz Ahmed, Spike Jonze. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's quite incredible. A couple of years ago, we won an Oscar with Riz for a film that we commissioned called The Long Goodbye.
Oh, I remember that.
Winning the Oscar is obviously an amazing moment to sort of cement.
Were you there? Did you get to go?
I did, yeah.
Who dressed you?
I dressed myself.
Oh, you didn't have, yeah.
I did buy a suit for it, so I had a suit tailored in London. That was quite nice. But the night before the Oscar, Riz gave this speech where he talked about our involvement with him.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew Riz as a spoken word.
Yeah.
So it was like a music industry relationship that had lasted for quite a long time. And then he came with what was going to be basically a music video, but it turned into a film. And timing-wise, this is Trump's in power here, Brexit's just happening in the UK, a lot of unsafety, people feeling fearful. So this film is about racism in post-Brexit Britain. And Riz gave this speech and said he was expecting WeTransfer to come in during the process and tell him to put in, you know, a little upload bar or something other to destroy the film in his eyes. And they were preparing themselves for this sort of toothpaste moment. We were going to force him to do something. We didn't do it.
I like the expression toothpaste moment.
Yeah, that's what he called it. And we never did it. We just let him do his thing. We enabled him to see his vision through. And that made him run harder for us and respect us much more in the process. And I think as a compliment in the work that we do, that's one of the greatest compliments I think we've ever had.
You know, you mentioned bootstrapping WeTransfer, and it's still a private company, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think it would be different if you'd had a bunch of VC funding at the beginning?
Oh, it wouldn't be what it is. 100%. I mean,
Really?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think our investors, so we took investment in 2015, but we'd already proven the business model.
You were already profitable.
We were profitable from 2013, I think. So we'd already demonstrated that it worked. There were so many things that we did that were the antithesis of what everyone else was doing, which made it very difficult actually to raise money, because if you were profitable and if you were actually sitting on cash and trying to run your business.
Right, then you weren't ambitious enough.
Fast forward to 2024, it's a very different narrative. If you are not profitable, it's going to be very difficult for you to raise money. We had the fortune, and it really is good luck, because 2009, 2010, when we started, the internet was just exploding. You didn't have to pay for any SEO. You didn't have to pay for Facebook ads, Instagram ads, nothing. It was all free.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a long time ago, but we went from literally nothing to 2 million users on nothing.
How did you market the company then?
So again, that's where it's so different today. In 2010, if there was a conference, they wanted tech people there. This is pre-Elon changing the landscape of technology. It was exciting. It was interesting. People loved it. So there was so much goodwill. Everybody wanted you to succeed. Everybody wanted it to be Dutch success story or a European success story or something else. And one of the founders, he had a blog, and in the Netherlands, he was like the equivalent of Mashable. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
You just needed to basically put it on Mashable and 2 million people would find it. But there was another website that existed back then that doesn't exist anymore called StumbleUpon.
Of course I remember StumbleUpon.
So StumbleUpon gifted us 2 million users.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know, for those that are listening that don't know what it is, it was this website that randomly just suggested something you should check out. And that sounds so obvious today.
Yeah, I remember being 14 and clicking through until I found something inappropriate. You know what I mean? That was like the classic stumble upon experience.
Yeah.
Do you ever see WeTransfer going public?
Well, we attempted it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So our timing was quite bad. The market literally was working very much against us at that time. And that was not the most enjoyable process I've ever been through. But no, we have investors, so at one point, something will have to change.
Half of the company's revenue used to come from advertising profits. Now it looks more like 30%. Tell me sort of why that is. I mean, explain the split to me.
So in the beginning, it was all advertising. The only model we had was straight advertising. And I can't remember exactly when it was, but in like 2013, I think we introduced subscriptions. So then you could basically pay to get more storage and customization and that sort of thing. And so then in those early years, the split was probably 90-10.
Mm-hmm.
It was for a long time 50-50. Our advertising business was growing really well. Subscriptions were going really well. But I think during the pandemic, again, what we saw is this sudden spike in subscription revenue. So we have quite a few products that sit underneath WeTransfer now. Most people will know WeTransfer. Some people might know WePresent. But then a lot of people will probably not know that we have Paper and Collect and Paste and Portals. No, didn't know that.
Nope.
Okay. So Paper is a drawing app, just really for iPad to sketch. It's very beautiful. For years, it's been like a favorite of artists and illustrators. Collect is basically an app for collecting rich media, so to create mood boards, videos, playlists, imagery, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of interior designers use it for literally creating a sort of feel of something. Portals and reviews is basically a step in the process of creation. So if you uploaded something through WeTransfer, you're able to annotate the document and collaborate on something.
How do you explain that you're more than a tech company? I know you have a presence at Tribeca this year. Tell me how that's going.
Okay, so we're getting better at communicating. We were very, very poor at it, hence you asking the questions.
Yeah.
We bootstrapped the business. So unlike a lot of tech companies, we didn't have tons of money in the beginning. We weren't heavily funded and financed. So we were meager with how we spent our money on advertising and stuff. So basically the money that we had, we put into producing content. And a lot of that was film. A lot of it was creative projects that we were backing or being involved in. And that was really to benefit from the media that we had. We have 80 million users on the platform. We have an ad that rotates every 40 seconds. Yeah. If it was just ads, it would be very boring. So we wanted to put interesting content in between it, much like a magazine. So we were producing these things ourselves with the minimal amounts of money that we had. Over time, it just felt like it was a natural evolution that we went from producing a short series called 1 Minute Wonders that were 60-second films, which we made 60 of, to the creative class, to backing other projects, to eventually getting involved with Riz Ahmed and producing The Long Goodbye.
How do you think recent developments in generative AI are going to change things for WeTransfer, and also how do you see them changing things in the creator economy and the people you sort of help in their jobs?
I mean, what we're seeing already is that there's just a plethora of new content being produced. So for us, it's quite good. We see an increase in volume. That's not necessarily related to quality. I don't think I'm in a position to talk about what the quality is going to look like or, where it's going to go. But certainly in terms of volume of assets or, creative output, it's incredible and it will only get bigger.
Has it affected the sort of artists or projects that WeTransfer wants to support?
No. AI, I think, is incredibly scary for people that are average. If you're really good.
That's me.
No, I mean, if you're unfortunately a sort of an invisible cog in the wheel of the creative process.
Right, got it.
It's going to be quite threatening.
So if you're not one of the creative people and you're just making things happen or executing.
Yeah, as long as I think you're putting your name on things and you can really claim ownership of them, I think it would just aid the process. But the top illustrators will be fine. The illustrators in the middle that are basically just churning out content to fill websites, I'm not sure it's going to be so fine.
Gotcha. And the illustrators starting out will never be able to. That's the thing that I worry about, right?
I think you're just going to have to work a lot harder to get seen.
Gotcha.
But I think that we've adapted quite fast in the internet's history to be able to see branded content or paid for content or whatever else in our feeds. I don't think it would take us that long to see AI content in the stuff that we're viewing and digesting. So you've got to make sure that your work is not generic.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That's always been the case.
Damian, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
Okay, we are back with Alex, and it's time to wrap up the show with Keeping Tabs. This is where each one of us shares a story, trend, or piece of pop culture we're following right now. And Alex, I know you have 3 million tabs open. What are you keeping tabs on?
How did you know? I have so many tabs. I honestly can't choose.
It's because an addict always knows an addict. Both Yaz and I are. We're in the 70 to 100 range at a minimum.
Game recognized game.
It's so much content, so much potential content. I know this isn't a fun tab, but basically, so as you may know, Elon Musk promised he would donate $45 million a month to support Donald Trump.
I remember this.
He has a secretive group, a super PAC, which is a group that operates independently of the presidential campaign to help promote the campaign. And so the PAC has been running a big voter registration effort in swing states to get hundreds of thousands of voters behind Trump. Now, it came out in August that the website was taking voters in swing states' information and it wasn't directing them to the proper official portals at the end. What I found is that the PAC also spent $900,000 on ads on Facebook and Instagram that did something similar, except the ads didn't take people to a website. They opened up a form within Facebook and Instagram. These are called form ads, and I had never heard of them before. And after a lot of conversations with Facebook, they admitted that these were form ads. The forms do not appear within Facebook's ad library. And that's kind of important because after 2016, Facebook said it would make all political ads public for everyone to see so that campaigns could be more transparent. But these form ads, their forms do not appear in the ad library. What data the forms were collecting and for what purpose, we don't exactly know. But experts, I said that this may not be illegal, but it's certainly a sneaky way to collect data. It's something that people need to be looking out for, especially during political campaigns. There's a lot of efforts to gather voter data, combine it into databases that are then used to message voters until election day. It's also not very effective. Apparently, they only collected, for all this money that they spent, about a total of $20 million over a course of 2 months. They only collected about 8,000 voters' information. So they've only sent out about 8,000 registration forms.
And that's not a good return on investment.
It's not a very good return. And then it turns out that, Elon Musk decided to fire the contractors involved in July. So they left, then they had to get rehired in order to send out these voter registration forms to people. The bottom line there is that a lot of people on the Republican side think that the GOP relies way too much on private contractors to do its canvassing, to do its get out the vote work. And so there have been questions about some of the contractors involved in Elon's super PAC. And some other experts I spoke to said the bigger issue is that there are new laws that essentially allow for super PACs to operate directly in conjunction with presidential campaigns when it comes to get out the vote efforts. And it looks like America PAC is doing that. This is going to lead to more dark money flowing into the campaigns than there already was. Now, for context, the amount of money being spent in this election so far on ads is insane. Apparently, so far since the beginning of the cycle, more than $1.6 billion have been spent on ads or on ads that will air through Election Day. Democrats have spent about $882 million. Republicans have spent about $721 million. But there's a lot of money going into this race. And one of the things I learned from this story is that a lot of that money is just not very well spent. And sometimes it's spent on somewhat sketchy tactics.
Democracy.
All right, Josh, what are you keeping tabs on?
Well, I'm also keeping tabs on politics as well. And of course, I got to bring back up RFK Jr. By the time you listen to this, I know this is going to be old news, but I can't not talk about it. So forget the endorsement from Robert F. Kennedy. That doesn't matter. What matters is this story that came out about it. Well, not even like came out. It just resurfaced from an old Town and Country profile of RFK's daughter, Kick Kennedy, which great nickname, by the way, Kick Kennedy.
Yeah, I think Kick was also like named after her aunt
Her
who died
grandmothers or great aunts, yeah.
who like died on a plane with a guy she was having an affair with. It's like crazy stuff.
It's awesome. Right. Kennedys are wild. I'm going to read a graph from this Town and Country article. Kick's taste for the extreme was fed by her dad's, RFK Jr.'s, eccentric environmentalism. Exhibit A. When she was 6, word got out that a dead whale had washed up on Squaw Island in Hyannisport. Shout out Squaw Island. Bobby, who likes to study animal skulls and skeletons, ran down to the beach with a chainsaw, cut off the whale's head, and then bungee corded it to the roof of the family minivan for the 5-hour haul back to Mount Kisco, New York. And then there's a quote from Kick in there. Quote, every time we accelerated on the highway, whale juice would pour into the windows of the car, and it was the rankest thing on the planet, Kick recalls. That is so disgusting on so many ways, and yet somehow not the craziest story we've heard from RFK involving some sort of animal. Between the worm in his brain, the bear cub in Peter Luger's, and the whale head on the roof of his car. This guy's incredible.
We got to keep him away from animals, is what you're saying.
He loves nature.
Yeah, keep this guy out of the zoo. Wow. Just incredible.
I mean,
I will never get over this.
You could tell me any story involving RFK and an animal, and I would believe it now. I think
100%,
that's where I am.
100%.
Yes, what are you keeping tabs on?
Guys, you may have seen Oasis is reuniting.
Ugh.
Very exciting. My husband's a big fan, and I've been calling their reunion concert Straight Pride.
I'm not a fan of Oasis.
Look, I really like Oasis, but what I like the most is all of the ridiculous headlines they've had over the years have been resurfacing. So there's some like Liam Gallagher thought he had COVID, but his house was just hot. Quote, it's confusing and scary. And I'm just...
That's a song.
More house is hot. I thought I had COVID. That's so funny.
And it's just like, every headline is so good.
Oasis occupies the same place in music history to me as Dave Matthews Band.
Do tell.
That is so, they are so not in the same, that makes no sense.
They're from the same period. And
just to share a few more,
I wish I'd done
Noel
that.
Gallagher about Jack White, quote, he's like Zorro on donuts. Which is,
that's so funny.
That's the thing. All of their quotes are just like.
Yeah. Get them a reality
show. real champagne supernova of a headline.
They should have a Truth Social show too.
They should. Yeah. Oasis on Truth Social.
Them and RFK Jr. would be so crazy.
Oh, I was thinking of there. So Noah, let me tell you about the time. That's a pretty good RFK.
That was good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think that's.
I'm not going to try.
I think this is where we end.
What a great place to end this podcast.
That's it for Most Innovative Companies. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Our show is produced by Avery Miles and Blake Odom, editing by Julia Shu, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.